Okay, it's been a full weekend since the movie came out. I figure that enough people have gotten a chance to see the movie, but if you haven't, turn this video off because I am ready to do my first spoiler video of the year, and of course it can't be for none other than for Captain America the Winter Soldier. So I'm warning you once again, you have not seen Captain America the Winter Soldier, go see it, you have plenty of time. I don't believe another blockbuster movie is gonna come anytime soon and during this particular month until the next Marvel movie that is not part of the Marvel universe. It's a huge shame. Come on, Sony, Paramount, Marvel, Disney, whoever, make it happen. But go see it, come back, and then you can watch this video worry-free. So now let's go ahead and talk about spoilers. I'm gonna go ahead and start off with some of the smaller things that happen in the movie before we get to the big eventful twist that this movie contains that I felt was lacking in previous Marvel movies, at least in the previous Marvel movies within Phase 2, from Iron Man 3 to Thor the Dark World. This is the game changer. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and talk about some of the smaller things in this movie. Let's start off with something that I kinda took notice the second time that I seen the movie, because I actually just came back from watching the movie a second time. And I can honestly say that I actually do like the movie a little bit more the second time around. I appreciate it a little bit more. And yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite Marvel movies, as I stated already in my original review. But something that I kind of took notice the second time, and I saw it a little bit the first time I saw the movie, but the second time I kind of took notice of it just a little bit more, and that is that the movie's 2 hours and 15 minutes, so it's a bit of a lengthy movie. It's longer than Thor, it's longer than... I think it's about the same running time as Iron Man 3, if not, maybe just like 5 minutes longer or something like that. But there's certain scenes, or at least certain ways that scenes end, where you can kind of tell that they trimmed it a little bit. You can tell that at some point there's going to be a deleted scene on the DVD later on when the movie comes out in August, the same time that Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, which leads me to believe that there's going to be another Marvel one-shot similar to the one that they had on Thor the Dark World featuring the Mandarin. I believe there's going to be a same kind of deal going on when Captain America comes out on DVD, considering that they're both, that the DVD is coming out, the DVD and the Blu-ray is coming out at the same time as Guardians of the Galaxy. 4 months is usually how long it takes for a Marvel movie to end up on the streets in DVD and Blu-ray fashion, so I expect there to be a little something on that Blu-ray set that's going to have to do with Guardians of the Galaxy, or maybe the Marvel Universe to some extent. But there's certain moments in the movie where you can kind of tell that the scene was supposed to continue, but they just cut it, and I kind of wish we would have seen a little bit more of that. I mean, if it was directed just as well as the rest of the movie and written just as good, I wouldn't have minded seeing a 2.5-hour cut of this movie. I mean, there's probably going to be some people that will want some more action, but if the deleted scenes meant for more dialogue and more talking and more plot, those people would have been turned off somewhat. But I would have been welcome to the idea. Two scenes in particular were the one where Balrog, or not Balrog, I think that's the thing from Lord of the Rings, but that guy who's played by the UFC fighter, or whatever his name is. I remember the Leaper or something like that being his comic book name from the comics. Apparently he was from the comics, I didn't know that. But when he throws the bomb and Black Widow and Captain America jump through the window and they have their nice little interplay and Captain America runs off, I think that there was probably something that happened right after that, but instead they just cut directly to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters and Captain America confronting Nick Fury about Widow's detraction for the mission. I felt like there was something there that was missing. And the biggest culprit would have to be the fight between Falcon and Crossbones, which was completely cut out. Immediately when they start fighting, they just cut it back to what everything else is going on, and when we cut back to them, the fight is practically over, with the helicarrier crashing onto the building. I wish I could have seen that fight, but instead it gets completely cut out, probably for time. I wish we could have seen that, but that's what the Blu-ray is for. But I do give credit to the writers for keeping everybody that I wanted to see more of alive. Like, literally every character that I kept saying, oh man, I wish I could have seen more of him, more of the Winter Soldier, more of Falcon, even more of Crossbones. They all survived by the end of this movie. Falcon is obviously alive, they're not going to kill him off. Winter Soldier, or aka Bucky Barnes, is still alive, roaming around in the Smithsonian, trying to figure out his past. And based on the paramedics' reaction to the scene, we are led to believe that Crossbones is still alive. They're trying to resuscitate him, so obviously they're taking notice that he still has a pulse, he's still breathing, so they're trying to save him. And considering that implication, I'm led to believe that Crossbones is going to come back. And like I said, I wish we could have seen more Crossbones, so hopefully we'll get that service in a future Marvel movie. I don't know if it's going to be in Captain America 3, which has been recently confirmed, or if it's going to be in the Avengers 2, or even Avengers 3, who knows. And the last small detail that I didn't really get a chance to talk about in the review, and it's not particularly a spoiler, but now that I remembered, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it, and that is that every now and then something would happen, whether it be in the story or in the actual movie in terms of visual effects, that I found a little shoddy, and you kind of need to suspend your disbelief. There's certain shots where somebody's falling from a distance and you're like, why do you not have a single broken bone in your body? I mean, I know that Captain America is supposed to have this serum inside him that makes him this strong, but if you're going for realism, he should at least have a fractured bone. Even if it's not protruding out of his skin, he should at least have some form of injury. When he jumps from the top, from that elevator and down through 2 panes of glass, you're like, okay. And when Falcon lands on that building, just in the nick of time, right when he deploys that parachute, who, by the way, does not have any serum in him, at least one of his legs should have been broken. The way he lands on there, he should have at least gotten a small hairline fracture somewhere there. And I would say that, okay, maybe the writers didn't do that because they wanted Falcon to fight with Crossbones later on in the movie, but guess what? They cut that out, so what was the point? And going back to the visual effects, most of them, actually like 90% of the effects in this movie are good, especially when the helicarriers took each other out. That was amazing. That scene alone, I kept thinking to myself, man, it would be quite awesome to not only see this specific scene, just this scene, not the rest of the movie, even though the rest of the movie is awesome, but just this scene alone. I wish I could see it in IMAX 3D because I feel like it deserves it. But just this scene alone. But there were a couple of shots where the effects showed their seams. Somebody's standing is obviously standing in front of a blue screen, or somebody's wearing a harness. There's a scene where Winter Soldier and Captain America fall off from a high platform down to a lower platform, and you can kind of tell that something's holding them because of the way that they fall back. They're not falling like gravity demands it to be. But I was only taken out for like a small second, and then afterwards I was back on board with the movie because it was just that good. It didn't really take me out for that long. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some of the big things that happened in this movie, starting off with the Winter Soldier himself. Already knew, because like I said, we had all these set photos and these trailers. Most of the trailers were fine, but it was that second one that was just ugh. But going back to the Winter Soldier, before I get to that second trailer, I already knew that it was Bucky because of an article that I unfortunately read. I mean, it didn't really have this in the headline, so I was kind of fooled here, but as I went down the article, it said right there that Sebastian Stan was going to reprise his role as Bucky Barnes because he is the Winter Soldier, and I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And it was there where I was like, okay, at least some of my friends and some people that I know don't really not only read these articles talking about movies that are coming out, but also they don't read comics, so they don't know the full extent of the Winter Soldier storyline. So I'm like, okay, they're in the clear, but then they released that second trailer. And that second trailer didn't really reveal the Winter Soldier as much as it showed too much of what was going on with Nick Fury, because that was the thing that I was talking about in my review, that thing that's supposed to have some sort of an emotional impact, and that is Nick Fury possibly dying. And, you know, just people, this second time that I saw the movie, there were some people who were like, no, he can't die. I heard some people say that. And I'm like, wow, you guys fortunately were the fortunate ones to not see that second trailer, because in that second trailer they show little bits that ruined it for me. They showed Nick Fury on that table being operated on, and then later on they showed a shot of Black Widow standing upon a table with somebody underneath the covers, and they didn't show the head like they did in this movie, but I was able to put two and two together and be like, that's Nick Fury underneath. And then later on in the trailer they would show a shot that had Nick Fury saying, looks like you're calling the shots, Captain. And that line, I know, this is me just overthinking, but that line alone made me go, that's the end of the movie right there. That's the end of the movie right there. Nick Fury telling Captain America that he's quote-unquote in charge now. And sure enough, as I watched the movie, I'm like, where's that shot of Nick Fury saying that? And to top it off, in that shot, you can clearly tell that he has certain battle scars that are not present at the beginning of this movie. So I'm like, well, he's got to come back because that scene has to be in this movie unless they cut it out. And sure enough, he came back. No surprise to me whatsoever. So congratulations to all of you who had no idea about the Winter Soldier and managed to skip out on that second trailer. I envy you like the lucky bastard you are. Okay, so now the end credit scenes. Of course, it's a Marvel movie and it's part of the universe, even though you don't necessarily need to be part of the MCU to actually have an end credit scene because The Amazing Spider-Man did. But it's become a habit now with Phase 2 that every Marvel movie now has to have two end credit scenes. One in the middle after the animated sequence, and then one at the very end. With the exception of Iron Man 3, because I believe Avengers 2 was not completely finished in terms of its script, so they didn't really know what to put in Iron Man 3, so they decided to put that little gag with Tony and Bruce at the very end. But so far, Thor the Dark World had two scenes in it, and this one had two scenes, and I was able to watch both scenes the second time around. And first and foremost, my thoughts on the second scene, neat, but it didn't really do much. It's almost like the studio knows that most of the people in the theater are gone by now, so let's go ahead and go ahead and give those last few people that stuck around a nice little reward, and we get that in the form of Bucky or the Winter Soldier being at the I can't pronounce that, the Smithsonian fucking museum. He's there trying to investigate about his past and what happened with him and trying to recuperate his memory, because the last time we saw him, sure, he rescued Steve, but that's mainly on an instinct level. I mean, not all of the pieces of his memory are completely back, so he's trying to put things together. And that could lead for an interesting premise in Captain America 3. I mean, it could be almost like a not necessarily a spy thriller, because this one was more of a spy thriller, but more of a psychological thriller with Marvel trappings, so to speak. But the studio also realizes that the first scene needs to be put after the animated sequence before everybody in the theater is gone, because I feel like Marvel Studios recognizes that people are still leaving before the credits are over. We've already had 5, 6, 7 movies that have end credit scenes in them, and people are still walking out. More people were walking out the second time that I saw the movie, more so than the first time. I'm like, really? Seriously. So now Marvel Studios caught a hold of that, and now they're putting their most important end credit scene before the scrolling credits, but after the animation. And this scene in this movie features not only what appears to be Loki's staff. I'm not 100% sure. It looks a little different. It looks different enough to not be Loki's staff. I don't know. I honestly do not know. If you guys know what all that's about with that staff, that the Hydra is, or whatever the hell they are. I wanted to call them Nazis, but they're not necessarily Nazis. They're just people of Hydra, with probably the most stereotypical German there. But they're taking a look at what appears to be Loki's staff, and I gotta watch Avengers again because I can't remember what happened with Loki's staff. I believe it was, I believe S.H.I.E.L.D. apprehended it, of course, S.H.I.E.L.D. And now we're taking another look at it with S.H.I.E.L.D. or Hydra now having some nefarious purposes with it. But after that, we cut to the twins who are under their custody. And of course, the twins are none other than Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, who are going to be in Avengers 2. If you guys have seen those set photos, you know what they look like and you know what they're all about. At least those set photos have come with some sort of backstory to who Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are. And they were nice to see in this end credit scene. Like, I wasn't expecting them to show up in this scene, and they looked cool, and they got me kind of hyped up for Avengers 2, more so than I was already. But I will say that the surprise factor is taken away by the fact that we've had set photos released. It's going back to what I was talking about in my review, saying that some of the surprise of some of these end credit scenes, as well as the movies themselves, they get a little bit diluted by the fact that we have all these news articles being published. I had no idea that the Winter Soldier was Bucky Barnes if it wasn't for that article, because I wasn't familiar with the Winter Soldier story. I don't really read comics that much. I read more so graphic novels, like whole storylines that are compartmentalized into one graphic novel. I'm actually currently reading The Dark Knight Returns, but that's actually several books, but they managed to take all those books and put them together in this graphic novel released on paperback, and that's what I'm currently reading. So I tend to read that more so than actual comic book story arcs where you have to collect all these different books. And I know that, yeah, we got the internet now. You can go online and you can buy a subscription through Marvel.com and you can go back and read all these books, but there's just a lot and I feel a little lazy to do so, so I wasn't familiar with the Winter Soldier storyline. So because of this article, I got spoiled by that, and that kind of took away from seeing Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver up on the big screen. I'm like, okay, I kind of have an idea of what they look like, but I still enjoyed seeing them in this end credit scene because I wasn't expecting them to be in this scene. What's going to happen with them, and how are they going to end up in Avengers 2, which obviously they will be? Who knows? I mean, it's the same question that we have about the Ether from Thor: The Dark World. How is Benicio del Toro's character going to be able to use it, and how is that going to play within the whole plot of Avengers 2? And last but not least, some references thrown out here and there. Some are made to past movies, some that you would come to expect, like the mentioning of Bruce Banner and some images of Stark Industries, some mentionings to Tony Stark, as well as it's Tony Stark's father, Howard Stark. But the big one, the big name drop that really caught my eye was Stephen Strange, mentioned by Agent Sitwell, which we bid farewell after this movie. No more Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for that guy. But the mentioning of Stephen Strange is curious because I remember them saying that it might or might not happen in terms of having a Doctor Strange movie happen, but considering that this guy just mentioned him within this Marvel universe that consists of Thor and Iron Man and Hulk, you know, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, sure, they put him in the script, and it could just be a nice little Easter egg for the fans, but this could definitely be some form of catalyst for a potential Doctor Strange movie in the future. But now let's go ahead and talk about the big twist in this movie. S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually Hydra. And this is the big game changer, the thing that I feel is going to change everything and made the Winter Soldier the Empire Strikes Back of Phase 2 so far. I mean, sure, Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World were good sequels. They weren't bad, but they didn't have that thing that really elevated it in terms of drama. And I'm going to go ahead and step out of the Marvel Universe and go to something like Star Trek Into Darkness. Star Trek Into Darkness was a good sequel, but it didn't have something at the end that made us go like, wow, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen with these characters? Where are they going to go? What's Nick Fury going to do? I mean, sure, we have a nice little montage that shows Kobe Smulders applying for human resources at Stark Industries, and Agent 13 is going for the CIA, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is practically no more, and Black Widow's going to do her thing, whatever that is going to be, and Captain America along with Falcon are going to go after Bucky. But it just begs the question, like, okay, how are they going to go about this, and what is Nick Fury going to do? Because out of all those characters, Nick Fury is the one that we know the least of what he's going to do. I mean, sure, he's got some passports under his belt, but what is he truly going to do, and how are we going to see him again, considering that he's the one who brought these guys together in the first place to create the Avengers? So it's really interesting to see. But the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. is literally no more has its fair share of ripple effect upon the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not only in the direction that the movies are going to go with the remainder of Phase... Well, the remainder of Phase 2 is kind of secure for now, considering that all we have left before Avengers 2 is Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's going to take place in literally the galaxy, alright? It doesn't really have to worry about Earth for now. In fact, it might not be until Phase 3 that the Guardians will come into contact with the Avengers, and we're going to have this large super group, who knows. But Guardians of the Galaxy is going to be its own thing. It's probably going to be the first movie, the first Marvel movie that is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, considering that Benicio del Toro's character, the Collector, was in Thor: The Dark World's end credit scene. But it's going to have the least form of ties with everything else that's going on, and this is probably going to be the first movie to do so since probably either The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton or even the first Iron Man. But it makes you imagine Avengers 2 is going to be the movie that is definitely going to change our perspective of how these characters are going to do their thing in Phase 3, because obviously S.H.I.E.L.D. is not going to be it's not going to have anything to do with Phase 3, considering that S.H.I.E.L.D. is practically no more, and like that German guy says in the end credit scene, S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, two sides of the same coin, and it definitely changes things. It makes you think, not only for the current Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, it also makes you think about past Marvel movies. Even if you didn't know about this at the time and you didn't think of it that way, it really makes you think. I mean, one of the returning characters in this movie is, I can't remember his name, but the senator played by Gary Shandling. Once you see him, you go, oh, it's the senator from Iron Man 2. Yeah, do you remember what he was trying to do in Iron Man 2? He was trying to get Tony to forfeit the Iron Man technology over to the government. Hell, possibly even to S.H.I.E.L.D. So I was going to bed the night that I saw Captain America the Winter Soldier for the first time about this twist that happened about how Hydra is actually S.H.I.E.L.D. And it made me think back to Iron Man 2 with the senator being in that movie, reprising his role in this movie, and thinking to myself about how he was part of Hydra, obviously after whispering Hail Hydra to Sitwell, and how he wanted Tony to give up the Iron Man armor. And I'm like, whoa, that's why he wanted him to give it up, to give it to Hydra so that Hydra can use it for their own nefarious purposes. It just makes you think about past Marvel movies as well as future ones, and I definitely think that this is what solidified Captain America the Winter Soldier to be one of the best Marvel movies. And so far, possibly after watching it a second time, I actually kind of want to change my rating in my previous review, and I will go ahead and say that this is probably the best Marvel movie in Phase 2 so far. That's right, I'm printing a retraction, so to speak, and I will say that this is actually a notch better than Iron Man. I already said that this was better than Thor: The Dark World, but I'm actually going to go ahead and retract my statements and say that this is actually just a notch better than Iron Man 3. And on that note, I conclude my spoiler discussion for Captain America the Winter Soldier. If you guys feel like I missed talking about something, or if you just want to tell me what you guys thought of the movie, let me know in the comments below, and feel free to go nuts considering that this is a spoiler video, so you don't have to worry about withholding anything. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.